In today's video, we're going to discuss how anyone can build 5 additional income streams after 60 and how that could generate you $5,767 every month. Over the past 14 years, I've helped retirees build income strategies that allow them to pursue the financial goals they're looking for without sacrificing their freedom. Many people believe income stops once you enter retirement, but this is far from reality. In today's video, we're going to break down 5 ways you can generate income once you enter retirement. I've often said income, cash flow in retirement is king. The ideal retirement has plenty of free-flowing cash that can be used to support all of those awesome retirement goals and dreams that you have. So let's get into those income streams right now. We'll start off with a powerful one that you hear a lot about, but you may not fully understand: dividend investing. We're specifically talking about dividends paid from stocks here. So let's start with what that actually means. When you buy stock, whether individual stocks or through something like a mutual fund or ETF, you're ultimately buying some small sliver of ownership in that company. As an owner, you're entitled to a share of the profits of that company. Companies that pay a dividend are paying a portion of those profits to the owners of the company, the shareholders. Think of it almost like a rent payment for owning that stock. If you're investing in funds or ETFs, which is what most folks do, you'll get a monthly dividend payment, and that's perfect for a retiree looking to generate income. How much income? I'll get to that in just a second. But first, let's talk about the time it takes to generate this sort of income. All income streams are not equal, and this is a spot where dividend income really shines. Part of retiring is freedom of time, getting to do what it is that you want to do, and that's the beautiful thing about dividend investing. This is a truly passive income. It takes you no time at all once you've made the investment, and as long as the dividends are being paid, checks are showing up with zero work on your end. Now let's talk turkey. What kind of money can you make from dividends? Well, the quick answer is it depends. I'll give you an example of a high-yield dividend fund versus a more moderate fund, and then I'll explain why the higher dollar amount isn't always the better choice. So a quick peek at some options will show you that a high dividend stock fund right now may pay dividends of around 6 to 8% annually. Now that sounds great, but like I said, it comes with its own unique risks, which I'll get to here in just a second. A more conservative dividend payer is going to be closer to a 3.5% or so dividend right now, which is about half the amount, but for the long term might actually be the better option. What I mean when I say that is you need to be aware of some real misconceptions out there in the dividend investing world. For example, a higher dividend isn't always a better dividend. You need to look at both the dividend payout and the dividend payout ratio. The payout ratio tells you how much of the company's profits are being paid out as dividends. For example, let's say you invest in a company paying a 7% dividend, which sounds great. That's a lot of income, but it turns out the payout ratio is 97%, meaning nearly every dollar the company is making is going out the door to cover the dividend you're receiving. You've got 2 problems there. One, how's the company going to grow? It's starving itself of growth to cover paying out the dividends. There's no reinvestment being made. And 2, what happens if there's a downturn? The first thing that gets cut by the board is the dividend, which means your retirement paycheck just got cut. Now, a more conservative dividend payer, maybe in that 3.5% range that I spoke about earlier, likely has a lower dividend payout ratio, meaning they're still reinvesting in the growth of the business, which can mean rising profits and therefore rising income in the future. Retirement's a long game. You got to continue to plan for the future. They'll also have more flexibility to be able to maintain that dividend in a downturn because it's only a portion of the profits. The key lesson here is that more isn't always better. You have to know what you're investing in and judge the risks for yourself or with your advisor. A good place to start if you're new to dividend investing, go out and check out something called the Dividend Aristocrats Index. I've talked about that here before on the channel. It's an index that's comprised of blue chip dividend paying stocks that have raised their dividends each year for at least 25 years in a row. That type of investing can provide the type of steady, growing income that you want to see in retirement. Lastly, let's put this in dollar terms. I've talked percentages, but you can't deposit a percentage in the checking account. If you opted for that high dividend payer and you want to take the risk that comes along with it, let's say that you're getting that 7% dividend on a $200,000 investment, that would spin off $14,000 a year in dividends, or around $1,166 per month in income. A dividend grower might be closer to the 3.5% mark, which is only going to provide half that amount, or $583 a month. Still, a really nice supplement to your retirement income, and it'll do so with a lower risk profile. Now let's get to income stream number 2, interest income. This seems pretty vanilla, but depending on exactly what you're investing in, it can be quite the opposite. I want you to think here in terms of risk, because I'm going to compare a few different types of interest, each that come with their own levels of income, but also their own level of risk. We're going to compare plain vanilla cash in the bank, CDs, high yield savings accounts, to bonds, also to things like private loans. All of them pay interest. Each of these will typically pay regular recurring income that happens at least monthly. So in that sense, they can be a valuable tool for building that retirement cash flow that we talked about. And here's another benefit. These are also passive investments. So your time invested here is zero beyond deciding if you want to invest and doing your due diligence on the investment to see if it's right for you. Once it's made, you don't have to do anything but sit back and watch the interest roll in. Sounds nice. So the question is, how much interest is going to be rolling in? Let's start on the lower end of the risk spectrum, the bank money. We know that bank money is FDIC insured up to the insurance limits. So from that standpoint, the risk level is very low. The income amount, however, is also lower than a lot of investments. And it's likely on its way down, as it looks like we're on the way to the Fed cutting interest rates. Actually, by the time this video goes live, it's entirely possible that they've started that process. That's actually one of the big risks of interest investing. It's called reinvestment risk, and I'll tell you about it in just a second. But first, back to the bank money. Right now, you can still comfortably find interest rates in the 4s, maybe even a low 5% here or there, but that's unlikely to continue. Prior to 2022, you were lucky to get anything north of 1% from this kind of money. So while everyone needs some cash in the bank, this is not going to be your retirement income stream hero. So let's climb one rung up the risk ladder and move out from FDIC insured to investing in bonds. I'll keep this section light, but if you're looking at bond investing, I've got a ton of videos on the channel to give you lots more detail. In general terms, a bond is a loan. You loan money to an entity, a government, a company, a municipality, and they agree to pay you interest for a period of time and then repay your principal. They tend to pay higher interest rates than CDs or cash in the bank because there's a little more risk here. Right now, again, these are rates that are in the 4s or the 5s for investment grade bonds, loans to companies with a solid balance sheet. Now, rates can get much higher for things like high yield bonds. Those are loans made to companies in a weaker financial position. Let's talk about that. So again, all returns aren't equal, and higher isn't always better. Think about it like this. Think about the risk of a loan, a bond in these terms. If your cousin Bob, who owned a home, who had a good job, who had cash in the bank, hit you up and they said, hey, I want to borrow some money, you'd likely be comfortable with that and that you'd be repaid according to whatever the terms of the loan were. Meanwhile, if your other cousin, Larry, who's been evicted 3 times in the last 4 years, he can't keep a job, he doesn't have 2 nickels to rub together. If he wants to borrow money, if you'd lend it to him at all, you'd probably want a higher interest rate because it's a riskier loan. That's the difference between a high yield bond and an investment grade bond. It's okay to lend to the cousin Larrys of the world as long as you're comfortable with the risk and you're getting paid for taking that risk. But make sure you know what the risk is before you send out the cash. The last thing I'll say about bonds is that certain types of bonds, specifically municipal bonds, earn tax-free interest. They are free from paying any type of federal income tax on the interest that is earned. They tend to pay lower rates as a result, but if you're in a high tax bracket, they can be a valuable savings tool. Now onto that risk that I talked about, reinvestment risk. This runs high with CDs and bonds. The risk is that the current rate may not be available when your money comes due, so you'll have to reinvest your money at a new lower rate. This risk is super high right now for CDs. For example, lots of banks will give you a short term, let's say 6 months, 12-month CD, paying the better part of 5%, but they won't give you a 5-year CD paying the same. It's because everyone thinks that rates will be lower in the near future. If you're relying on that kind of money for income every month, and you go from earning, say, 5% to earning 1.5%, that's not just a drop in interest. That's a 70% pay cut. So you got to be super careful with this kind of investing if it's making up a lot of your retirement income. I've seen people go from making $50,000, $100,000 a year in interest down to earning $15,000. That can blow up a retirement if that's the only source of income that you have. Now, As for what kind of income you can expect from this sort of investment, let's go back to the same $200,000 we talked about earlier. Invested in a bank CD or a high-yield savings account at 4%, that'll net you about $8,000 a year in real income, or around $667 per month right now, although we don't know how long that will last depending on what happens with interest rates. Money in a bond fund or a bond ladder, on the other hand, might get you a slightly higher return. Let's say that you're going to make 5%, and that's going to net you around $10,000 a year, or $833 per month for a passive income with relatively low risk. These can be great sources to supplement your other retirement income. On to income stream number 3. This is our last passive stream, meaning you don't have to do anything here but stroke the check to generate the income. Let's talk about annuities. Now, remember, there are a ton of different types of annuities. We'd be here for 3 days if I broke all of them down, but for retirement income, let's talk an annuity with an income rider, meaning a promise to pay a specific amount of income monthly. First off, what is it? Well, this specific type of annuity is basically a trade with an insurance company. You have an account with them, and they agree to pay you a specific income, typically guaranteed for your life or for the life of both you and your spouse. Think about it like longevity insurance. You can't outlive your income in this case. So the next question is like, well, why would they do that? Why would they give you that guarantee? It's for a fee, of course. They're not doing this for free. They're not just some benevolent institution handing out free money. Now, this income, this paycheck, is also guaranteed by the insurance company for life. That's important to understand because there is some risk there. They're guaranteed by the insurance company that your account is with, so you need to make sure that you're working with a fundamentally sound company with a long history here. That being said, an account like this basically looks like your own private pension. The money shows up month in and month out like clockwork. I think these types of accounts can be very valuable if you're entering retirement with a pretty big income gap, meaning, let's say you've got $10,000 a month in retirement living expenses. You need 10 grand a month, and you're only going to have 5,000 a month coming in guaranteed income, say Social Security or pensions. Using an annuity to backfill some or all of that $5,000 a month can bring a lot of value to your retirement. Another benefit of this type of income is that it can be tax advantaged, depending on if you have an IRA annuity, a Roth IRA annuity, or a non-IRA annuity. It's possible to use, for example, Roth money to purchase an annuity like this, and then all of that income that's going to come in for the rest of your life is tax-free. The flip side is that if you use traditional IRA money to fund the annuity, every dollar you get is subject to tax. That brings to light, like most of these strategies, there's more to it than meets the eye, and a good strategy executed poorly can turn into a bad strategy quickly, but that's a topic for another day. As for what kind of income you can expect, again, because interest rates are higher right now, you can find annuity payouts on accounts like this in the high 6s, maybe even 7% for a joint lifetime benefit starting at age 65. Now, a key item to note, that doesn't mean that the annuity is earning 7%. It means the insurance company is agreeing to send you a check equal to that amount. So if you put in the same $200,000, that's going to bring you $14,000 a year, or around $1,167 per month in income. And that amount does not go down regardless of what happens to interest rates in the future once it's locked in. Because of that, these can be very powerful tools for building your retirement income. Now let's get into another big one, real estate. Investing in real estate is a broad enough topic that it can be and is not only its own YouTube video, but there are entire YouTube channels about it. Today, I'm going to give you a slightly different take on real estate investing that can potentially benefit your retirement quite a bit. So first off, let's talk about the traditional way. That's direct investment in real estate, becoming a landlord. I'll start this off by saying this. If you do it right, the returns can be incredible. I've met lots of people who have made gobs of money in real estate, but the risks in this sort of investment are substantially higher than the passive investments we've spoken about to this point. Not only is the risk higher here, but the time investment can be substantial. This isn't passive investing. You've got to want to be the person willing to take the call that the roof is leaking or that the furnace went out at 2 o'clock in the morning on a cold night. That's a whole different thing from anything we've covered. It's not even my area of expertise, and so we're going to leave that part to the real estate pros. The other way to invest in real estate is through things like limited partnerships, real estate investment trusts, or certain types of private equity real estate investments. Those are more passive investments. Here's the scoop on those. From a risk standpoint, these are certainly riskier than a lot of the investments we've spoken about, but from a return standpoint, it's not uncommon to see returns in the 8 to 10% range from some of these investments. Additionally, depending upon the investment type, using things like depreciation can lower the amount of tax that you need to pay on the income that you're earning, which means more of what you gain ends up in your pocket. The drawbacks to this sort of investing is that the money isn't typically liquid, meaning you can't just access your principal anytime you want. After all, it's been used to purchase some sort of real estate most of the time. Additionally, this type of investment carries substantial risk. This is a case where I would recommend not just talking to an advisor, but to an attorney, to an accountant to review the investment before you do anything. That being said, the returns and the asset class can provide great benefits. There's an old quote. If you've been here before, you know I love old quotes. There's an old quote by Andrew Carnegie. He said, "More money has been made in real estate than all industrial investments combined." I'm not about to argue with the ghost of Andrew Carnegie. It can be a great tool to generate income. You just have to do it right. And so the question becomes, well, how much income can you generate? Let's use that 10% figure. There's certainly no guarantee of this, and it doesn't represent any specific investment. But if you made 10% return on your real estate investments, that $200,000 that you would invest would spin off $20,000 a year, or about $1,600 a month, which is some pretty substantial money. The last income stream, it's not an investment at all, but it's doing some type of work to earn additional income. I generally see two varieties here from most folks. Some people who continue on in their career field by consulting or teaching, and then those who just pick up a part-time job in retirement. Let's quickly talk about both of them. The nice part about these is we're not talking about investments here, so the amount of money that's needed to do this is either zero or pretty close to it. The investment to be made here is time. Now, I've got clients who consult and work 20 or 30 hours a month, and they make $30,000 to $50,000 a year, which can be incredibly fulfilling, and it's also very lucrative. I've also got clients who work as a golf course starter, or they pick up or deliver luxury cars for service appointments, or they work at the local hardware store. So like I said, this kind of runs the gamut. All of these can be ways to stay busy, to meet new people, to feel like part of a team. So it's important to note here that a lot of the benefits of this sort of thing for folks who want to do it are not just specifically the money. What's important here is that if it's something that brings you joy or fun, if it fills up your cup and it brings in some extra money, it can be a great income stream to have. Now, this one's a little bit harder to quantify because, like I said, there's a broad range of what it could look like. But let's say that you just pick up a part-time job, and let's say that you made $17 an hour, which is very doable these days with where things are at. If you worked 15 hours a week, that's not too much. That would bring in roughly $1,000 per month. Not bad income for getting out of the house a little bit. When you start adding all of these things up, even if you don't have income from every single stream, they can really start to build that retirement cash flow. And like I said at the beginning, cash flow is king when it comes to retiring well. Now that you've learned 5 completely different ways to generate income as a retiree, you can start worrying less about whether your savings will last and spend more time on what matters in retirement. However, there are factors of retirement planning I haven't been able to consider in this short video. If you want answers to some of retirement's difficult questions, click the link in the description.